Shadows in the Restaurant. Chapter 1. The Taste of Disapproval. New York City. New York. May 2025. The New York City evening buzzed with the energy of Little Italy, its streets alive with the hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and the aroma of garlic and tomatoes wafting through the air. Inside, Rossi's Trattoria, a family-owned Italian restaurant nestled on Mulberry Street. The atmosphere was a delicate balance of tradition and tension, the warm glow of pendant lights casting a soft sheen over red-checkered tablecloths. Sophia Rossi stood in the kitchen, her brown eyes focused, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her hands deftly tossing a pan of sizzling shrimp scampi. At 29, Sophia was a talented chef, her passion for culinary innovation, a flame that had drawn her to this family and now threatened to burn her. Sophia had married Marco Rossi 6 months ago, a whirlwind romance that had swept her into the Rossi family and their beloved Trattoria. Marco, 31, stood at the front of the house, his green eyes warm, his dark hair neatly styled, his smile a beacon for the guests filing in for the evening's special event, a new menu tasting. Sophia's first major contribution to the restaurant, but the shadow looming over the night was Isabella Rossi, Marco's mother, 58, the matriarch of the family and the heart of Rossi's Trattoria. Isabella stood near the bar, her gray eyes sharp, her silver hair pinned elegantly, her posture rigid in a black dress, her presence a storm cloud over Sophia's dreams. The kitchen was a flurry of activity, the staff moving with practiced precision, their voices a low hum beneath the sizzle of pans and the clatter of plates. Sophia plated her signature dish, a modern take on risotto alla Milanese, infused with a hint of lemon zest and a saffron foam, a dish she'd spent weeks perfecting. "This has to be perfect," she muttered, her brown eyes darting to the clock, her hands steady as she garnished the plate with a sprig of parsley. Tonight was her chance to prove herself, to show Isabella that she belonged not just as Marco's wife, but as a Rossi, a keeper of the family legacy. Marco poked his head into the kitchen, his green eyes bright, his voice warm. "Soph, it's time," he said, his smile encouraging. "The guests are seated. Everyone's excited to try your dishes. You've got this." Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper. "I hope so. Marco, your mom. She's been watching me like a hawk all day. I can feel her disapproval from here." Marco's smile faltered, his green eyes shadowed, his voice low. "She'll come around. Soph, she's just protective of the restaurant. It's been her life since Dad passed. Give her time." But time was a luxury Sophia didn't have. Not tonight. She carried the first plates out herself, her brown eyes scanning the dining room, her heart pounding as she set them before the guests, a mix of loyal regulars, food critics, and influencers, all eager for a taste of the new Rossi era. The room hummed with anticipation, forks clinking, voices murmuring, the New York night a warm backdrop through the windows. Isabella approached, her gray eyes cold, her voice a low hiss as she leaned in, her smile a mask for the guests. "Sophia, let's hope your little experiments don't ruin our reputation," she said, her words a dagger, her hands smoothing her dress. "My recipes have kept this place alive for 30 years. People don't come here for foam. Sophia's brown eyes blazed, her hands trembling, her voice steady despite the sting. They'll love it. Isabella, I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm trying to make it better. The first reviews were glowing, the guests raving about the risotto's delicate balance of flavors, the shrimp scampi's modern twist on tradition. Sophia's heart soared, her brown eyes bright, her smile genuine as she moved through the room, accepting compliments. But then, as she presented her signature dessert, a deconstructed tiramisu with espresso gel and mascarpone mousse, Isabella stepped forward, her gray eyes icy, her voice loud enough for the room to hear. "This isn't tiramisu," Isabella said, her tone sharp, her hands gesturing to the plate, the dining room falling silent. "This is an insult to tradition to my family. You call this food? It's a mockery." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her face flushing, her hands trembling as she stood frozen, the guests staring. The New York night a cold witness to her humiliation. "Isabella," she began, her voice trembling, but Isabella cut her off, her gray eyes unyielding, her voice a blade. "You don't belong here, Sophia," she said, her words a public execution, her smile a mask of disdain. "You'll never be a Rossi." The room buzzed, the guests whispering, the critics scribbling notes, Sophia's heart shattering as she turned and fled to the kitchen, her brown eyes streaming, her hands shaking. Marco followed, his green eyes wide, his voice desperate. "Soph, I'm so sorry," he said, his hands reaching for her, but she pulled away, her voice breaking. "She humiliated me." "Marco," she said, her brown eyes blazing, her hands clenching, in front of everyone. "I worked so hard, and she ruined it." Marco's green eyes glistened, his voice low. "I'll talk to her. Soph, she was wrong. She shouldn't have done that." But as Marco left to confront his mother, Sophia's brown eyes fell on the prep station, her heart stopping as she noticed the ingredients for her dessert. Someone had swapped the espresso gel for a bitter syrup, sabotaging her dish. Her brown eyes widened, her hands trembling, the realization hitting her like a wave. Isabella had done this. The New York night darkened. The kitchen, a battlefield. And Sophia knew this was only the beginning of a war she couldn't avoid. Shadows in the Restaurant. Chapter 2. The Taste of Defiance. New York City, New York. My 25. The New York City morning dawned with a soft gray light filtering through the windows of Rossi's Trattoria, the restaurant quiet after the storm of the previous night's tasting event, its red checkered tablecloths neatly folded, its pendant lights dim. Sophia Rossi stood in the kitchen, her brown eyes burning with determination, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her hands chopping garlic with a precision that belied the turmoil in her heart. At 29, Sophia was a chef whose passion had been tested, humiliated by her mother-in-law, Isabella Rossi, in front of guests, her signature dessert sabotaged, her dreams of belonging to the Rossi family tarnished. But today, she would fight back. The memory of Isabella's words still stung, a public rebuke that had echoed through the dining room. "You don't belong here. Sophia, you'll never be a Rossi." Sophia's brown eyes had streamed, her hands trembling as she'd fled to the kitchen. Marco following, his green eyes wide with concern. But the discovery of the swapped ingredients, the bitter syrup that had ruined her deconstructed tiramisu, had ignited a fire in her, a resolve to prove Isabella wrong, to show the matriarch that she was more than a threat to tradition. She was a Rossi, whether Isabella liked it or not. Marco Rossi entered the kitchen, his green eyes shadowed, his dark hair tousled, his hands in his pockets as he approached. At 31, Marco was the bridge between his wife and his mother, a role that weighed heavily on him, his voice low as he spoke. "Soph, I talked to Mom last night," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone hesitant. She's sorry for what she said, but she's not backing down. She thinks your new menu is a mistake." Sophia's brown eyes blazed, her hands pausing mid-chop, her voice trembling with rage. "Sorry, Marco." She humiliated me in front of everyone, critics, influencers, our regulars, and she sabotaged my dessert. I found the bitter syrup, she swapped it out to make me fail. She's not sorry. She's trying to drive me out. Marco's green eyes widened, his hands raising in defense, his voice breaking. "Sabotaged. Soph, are you sure? Mom's protective of the restaurant, but she couldn't do that." Sophia's brown eyes narrowed, her hands clenching, her voice a growl. "I'm sure. Marco, I saw the jar. It wasn't mine. She wants me gone, and I'm not going to let her win. I'm planning something bigger, a culinary event, here next week. I'll invite every critic in the city, show them what I can do. She won't stop me." Marco's green eyes glistened, his voice low, his hands reaching for hers. "Soph, I'm with you, I am. But Mom, she's not going to make this easy. Let me help you. Please, we'll do this together." Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her hands squeezing his. "I need you, Marco," she said, her voice a whisper. "But you need to stand with me, not her. If she sabotages me again, I don't know if I can stay." The week was a blur of preparation. Sophia working late into the night, her brown eyes focused, her hands crafting new dishes, a gnocchi with truffle cream, a branzino with citrus glaze, a panna cotta infused with lavender. She reached out to food bloggers, critics, and influencers, her voice steady as she invited them to Rossi's Trattoria for a new era tasting, a bold move to reclaim her place in the family. But Isabella was a storm on the horizon, her gray eyes cold, her silver hair a crown of authority as she moved through the restaurant, her presence a constant threat. Isabella had overheard Sophia's plans, her gray eyes narrowing, her hands smoothing her dress as she spoke to the staff, her voice a low hiss. "Sophia's trying to ruin us," she said, her words a poison, her smile a mask. "Her new era will destroy our traditions, our legacy. We can't let her do this." The staff whispered, their loyalty torn, the New York morning a cold witness to Isabella's campaign. She spread rumors to loyal customers, her voice sweet but venomous. "Sophia doesn't understand our family. She's trying to turn us into something we're not." The whispers reached Sophia, her brown eyes blazing, her hands trembling as she overheard a regular decline her invitation. Citing Isabella's warnings, Sophia confronted Marco, her brown eyes wet, her voice breaking. She's sabotaging me again. Marco, she said, her hands clenching, her heart heavy. She's spreading lies, turning people against me. I can't do this alone. I need you to stop her. Marco's green eyes glistened, his hands reaching for hers, his voice low. I'll talk to her. Soph, I promise, he said, his words a plea. But she's my mom. I can't choose between you. The night of the event arrived. The dining room transformed, fairy lights twinkling, the tables set with Sophia's creations, the aroma of truffle and citrus filling the air. Guests arrived, their voices a hum of excitement. The New York night a warm backdrop through the windows. But as Sophia prepared to present her dishes, she noticed the schedule, her carefully planned order of service, had been changed. The dishes shuffled, the timing thrown off. Her brown eyes widened, her hands trembling, the realization hitting her like a wave. Isabella had done this, another sabotage to ensure her failure. Sophia stormed into the office, her brown eyes blazing, her voice trembling as she confronted Isabella, the dining room buzzing beyond the door. You changed the schedule, didn't you? She said, her hands shaking, her heart racing. You're trying to ruin me again. Why can't you let me be part of this family? Isabella's gray eyes were cold, her hands folded, her voice a hiss. You'll never be part of this family, Sophia, she said, her words a dagger, her smile a mask of disdain. You're a threat to everything we've built. I'll protect my legacy, no matter what it takes. Sophia's brown eyes streamed, her hands clenching, her voice breaking. You're the threat, Isabella, she said, her words a declaration of war. The New York night, a cold witness. I'm not giving up. You'll see, I'll make this restaurant mine, whether you like it or not. Shadows in the Restaurant. Chapter 3. The Taste of Confrontation. New York City, New York, my 2025. The New York City evening shimmered with the vibrant energy of Little Italy, its streets alive with the hum of laughter, the clink of wine glasses, and the scent of fresh basil wafting through the air. Inside Rossi's Trattoria, the atmosphere was electric. The dining room transformed for Sophia Rossi's New Era tasting event, its walls adorned with fairy lights, its tables set with gleaming silverware, its air thick with anticipation. Sophia stood at the pass, her brown eyes scanning the kitchen, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her hands steady as she plated a delicate gnocchi with truffle cream. At 29, Sophia was a chef on a mission. Her resolve hardened after weeks of sabotage by her mother-in-law, Isabella Rossi, a battle that had left her humiliated but unbroken. The kitchen buzzed with activity, the staff moving with a rhythm honed by years of service, their voices a low hum beneath the sizzle of pans and the clatter of plates. Sophia's new menu was a bold statement. Oh, branzino with citrus glaze, a risotto with lavender-infused peas, a panna cotta with a hint of rosemary. Each dish a fusion of tradition and innovation, a testament to her skill and her vision for the Rossi legacy. Tonight was her chance to reclaim her place, to prove to Isabella, to the guests, to herself, that she belonged here. As a chef, as a Rossi, Marco Rossi stood at the front of the house, his green eyes bright with pride, his dark hair neatly styled, his smile warm as he greeted the arriving guests. At 31, Marco was caught between his wife and his mother, a role that had strained his marriage. His voice low as he approached Sophia, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You're doing amazing." "Soph," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone encouraging. "The critics are here. Eleanor Grant from Gourmet Gazette. Michael Torres from Food and Wine. They're all excited to taste your food." Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper. "Thanks, Marco. I can't shake the feeling that your mom's going to try something. She changed the schedule last time, made sure I'd fail. I can't let her ruin this." Marco's green eyes shadowed, his hands tightening on her shoulders, his voice low. "I talked to her, Sophia, I did. She promised to behave tonight. But I'll keep an eye on her, I swear." Isabella Rossi stood near the bar, her gray eyes cold, her silver hair pinned elegantly, her black dress a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere. At 58, Isabella was the matriarch of the Rossi family, the keeper of Rossi's Trattoria's legacy, a woman who saw Sophia as a threat to everything she'd built. Her campaign against Sophia had been relentless, spreading rumors to loyal customers, whispering to the staff that Sophia's new era would destroy their traditions. The New York evening was a cold witness to her resolve, her hands smoothing her dress as she watched Sophia with a predator's gaze. The dining room filled quickly. The guests, a mix of food critics, influencers, and regulars, their voices a hum of excitement as they sipped Chianti and nibbled on antipasti. Sophia stepped out, her brown eyes bright, her smile genuine as she addressed the crowd, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," she said, her hands clasped, her heart pounding. "At Rossi's Trattoria, we've always honored tradition, but tonight, we're also celebrating innovation. I hope you'll enjoy these new dishes. They're my love letter to this family, to this city." The applause was warm, the guests eager, but Isabella's gray eyes were icy, her hands folded, her voice a low hiss as she leaned toward a waiter, her words a poison. "She's going to ruin us," she said, her smile a mask for the guests. "Her food, it's not Rossi, it's not us." The first courses were a triumph. The gnocchi, earning gasps of delight. The branzino, drawing murmurs of approval. The New York night, a warm backdrop through the windows. Sophia's brown eyes glowed, her hands steady as she plated each dish. The critics scribbling notes, the influencers snapping photos. But as she prepared to present the risotto, Isabella stood, her gray eyes blazing, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "I need to say something," Isabella said, her tone sharp, her hands gesturing to the guests, the dining room falling silent. "This new era, it's a betrayal of our family, of our traditions. My husband built this restaurant on recipes that have lasted generations. Sophia's food, it's not Rossi, it's an insult." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her face flushing, her hands trembling as she stood frozen, the guests staring. The New York night, a cold witness to her humiliation. "Isabella, please," she said, her voice trembling, her heart racing. "This isn't the time. Let the guests enjoy their meal." Isabella's gray eyes were unyielding, her voice a growl. "You don't belong here." "Sophia," she said, her words a public execution, her smile a mask of disdain. "You'll never understand what this place means to us." The room buzzed, the guests whispering, the critics exchanging glances, Sophia's heart shattering as she stood her ground, her brown eyes blazing, her voice steady despite the sting. "I'm a Rossi, Isabella," she said, her hands clenching, her heart heavy. "Whether you like it or not. And these dishes, they're my way of honoring this family, of bringing us into the future." The tension hung heavy, the guests watching, the staff frozen. Marco's green eyes wide as he stepped forward, his voice desperate. "Enough! Both of you!" he said, his hands raised, his tone pleading. "This is supposed to be a celebration, not a war." The event continued, the guests tasting, the critics noting, Sophia's brown eyes wet but determined as she served each dish, her hands steady, her resolve unbroken. And then, as the final course, a panna cotta with rosemary was presented. Eleanor Grant, the critic from Gourmet Gazette, stood, her voice warm, her smile genuine. "I've dined at Rossi's Trattoria for years," she said, her words a balm, her eyes on Sophia. "And tonight, Sophia Rossi has shown us that tradition and innovation can coexist. This is some of the best food I've ever tasted here. She's a true talent." The applause was thunderous, the guests cheering, Sophia's brown eyes streaming, her hands trembling as she smiled. The New York night a warm witness to her triumph. But Isabella's gray eyes were cold, her hands clenching, her voice a hiss as she leaned toward Marco, her words a dagger. "She'll never be a Rossi," she said, her tone venomous, her smile a mask of rage. "I'll make sure of it." Sophia's brown eyes met Isabella's, her heart heavy, the dining room a battlefield. And she knew this war was far from over. Shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 4. The Taste of Enmity. New York City. New York! May 2025. The New York City morning cast a golden glow over Little Italy, its streets bustling with the hum of delivery trucks and early risers, the scent of espresso and freshly baked bread lingering in the air. Inside Rossi's Trattoria, the atmosphere was a volatile mix of triumph and tension, the dining room quiet after the whirlwind of Sophia Rossi's New Era tasting event the previous night. Its tables cleared, its fairy lights dimmed. Sophia stood in the kitchen, her brown eyes bright with determination, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, her hands kneading dough for a new batch of gnocchi. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had tasted victory, her event a success, her dishes praised by critics, her place in the Rossi family momentarily secured. But the battle with her mother-in-law, Isabella Rossi, was far from over. The memory of the event still lingered, a bittersweet triumph that had left Sophia both elated and wary. Eleanor Grant's praise, "Some of the best food I've ever tasted here," had echoed through the dining room. The applause, a balm to Sophia's wounded pride, her brown eyes streaming as she'd smiled through her tears. But Isabella's reaction, her gray eyes cold, her words venomous. "She'll never be a Rossi," had been a stark reminder of the war she faced, a war that had only intensified with her success. The New York morning was a cold witness to Sophia's resolve. Her hands steady as she prepared for the next battle. Marco Rossi entered the kitchen, his green eyes shadowed with exhaustion, his dark hair tousled, his hands in his pockets as he approached. At 31, Marco was a man torn, his role as mediator between his wife and his mother wearing him thin, his voice low as he spoke. "Soph, the reviews are in," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone a mix of pride and worry. "They're raving about your food. Eleanor Grant's piece in Gourmet Gazette is calling you a culinary visionary. You did it?" Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper as she wiped her hands on her apron. "Thanks, Marco," she said, her smile genuine but fleeting. "But your mom, she's not going to let this go. She said I'd never be a Rossi. She meant it. I can feel her plotting something." Marco's green eyes glistened, his hands reaching for hers, his voice breaking. "I know, Soph," he said, his words a plea. "I tried talking to her. She's furious. She thinks you're tearing the family apart, that your new menu is betraying our legacy. I don't know how to fix this." Sophia's brown eyes hardened, her hands squeezing his, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "You fix it by standing with me." "Marco," she said, her tone firm, her heart heavy. "She's been sabotaging me since the day I got here, changing schedules, swapping ingredients, spreading lies. If you don't take my side, I don't know if I can keep doing this." Before Marco could respond, Isabella Rossi swept into the kitchen, her gray eyes icy, her silver hair pinned tightly, her black dress a stark contrast to the warmth of the space. At 58, Isabella was a force of nature, her presence a storm that darkened the room, her voice a low growl as she spoke. "Marco, we need to talk," she said, her hands folded, her gaze flicking to Sophia with disdain. Alone, Sophia's brown eyes narrowed, her hands clenching, her voice trembling as she stepped forward. "If this is about me, Isabella, I deserve to hear it," she said, her heart racing, her resolve unyielding. "You've made it clear you don't want me here. Say it to my face." Isabella's gray eyes blazed, her hands smoothing her dress, her voice a hiss. "Fine, Sophia," she said, her words a dagger, her smile a mask of rage. "You're destroying this family. Your new era is a betrayal of everything we've built. Marco, you need to choose your mother, or this outsider who's tearing us apart." Marco's green eyes widened, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he looked between them. "Mom, stop," he said, his tone desperate, his heart torn. "Sophia's my wife. She's a Rossi. Whether you accept it or not, I'm not choosing between you. I can't." The tension hung heavy, the kitchen silent but for the hum of the refrigerator. The New York morning, a cold witness to the fracture in the Rossi family. Sophia turned back to her dough, her brown eyes wet, her hands steady as she channeled her anger into her work. She had a plan. She'd received an email that morning from a prominent food investor, Vincent Moretti, who'd attended her event and wanted to discuss a partnership, a chance to expand her vision beyond Rossi's Trattoria. It was a lifeline, a way to secure her future. But she knew Isabella would never allow it, not without a fight. Isabella spent the day in the dining room, her gray eyes cold, her hands directing the staff with a renewed intensity, her voice a low murmur as she spoke to loyal customers, her words a poison. "Sophia's going to ruin us," she said, her smile a mask for her venom. "Her food, it's not Rossi, it's not family," the whispers spread. The regulars nodding. The New York afternoon, a cold witness to her campaign. Sophia met with Vincent Moretti at a nearby cafe, her brown eyes bright, her hands clutching her portfolio as she pitched her vision, a line of Rossi-branded sauces, a cookbook, a series of pop-up events, all built on her fusion of tradition and innovation. Vincent, a silver-haired man in his 60s, nodded, his blue eyes impressed, his voice warm. "You've got something special, Sophia," he said, his words a balm, his smile genuine. "I'm in. Let's make this happen." But when Sophia returned to the Trattoria, her brown eyes glowing with hope, she found chaos, the walk-in refrigerator door ajar, a shipment of truffles, citrus, and fresh herbs scattered across the floor. Ruined, the air thick with the scent of waste. Her brown eyes widened, her hands trembling, the realization hitting her like a wave. Isabella had done this, another sabotage to break her spirit. Sophia stormed into the dining room, her brown eyes blazing, her voice trembling as she confronted Isabella. The staff, watching, the New York evening, a cold witness. "You did this, didn't you?" she said, her hands shaking, her heart racing. "You destroyed the ingredients, thousands of dollars. Isabella, just to stop me. Why can't you let me be part of this family?" Isabella's gray eyes were cold, her hands folded, her voice a hiss. "You'll never be part of this family." "Sophia," she said, her words a declaration of war, her smile a mask of disdain. "You're a threat to everything we've built. Marco, choose now. Your mother or her." Marco's green eyes streamed, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he looked between them. "I can't do this," he said, his words a plea, his heart torn. "Sophia, I love you, but Mom, she's my family, too. I need time." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her heart shattering, her hands clenching as she turned away. The dining room, a battlefield. The New York evening, a cold witness to a family on the brink of collapse. Shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 5. The Taste of Choice. New York City. New York. May 2025. The New York City dawn broke with a soft pink glow, casting a gentle light over the cobblestone streets of Little Italy. Its morning quiet, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within Rossi's Trattoria. Sophia Rossi sat in the kitchen, her brown eyes shadowed with exhaustion, her dark hair loose over her shoulders, her hands clutching a cup of espresso that had long gone cold. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had fought for her place in the Rossi family. Her event the previous week, a triumph that had earned her praise from critics, but deepened the rift with her mother-in-law. Isabella Rossi, the confrontation, Isabella's sabotage of the ingredients, her ultimatum to Marco had left the family fractured, and Sophia knew the battle was far from over. Marco Rossi stood at the kitchen door, his green eyes heavy with guilt, his dark hair tousled, his hands in his pockets as he approached. At 31, Marco was a man who had been forced to choose between his mother and his wife, a decision that had torn him apart, his voice low as he spoke. "Soph, I've made my choice," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone a mix of resolve and sorrow. "I'm with you. I told Mom last night. I can't let her keep doing this to you. You're my wife. And I love you." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her heart racing, her hands trembling as she set the cup down, her voice a whisper. "Marco, you mean it?" she said, her tone a mix of hope and fear, her heart heavy. "You're really choosing me over her. After everything?" Marco's green eyes glistened, his hands reaching for hers, his voice breaking. "I mean it, Soph," he said, his words a vow, his heart torn. "She's my mom, and I love her, but what she's doing, it's wrong. Sabotaging you, spreading lies, trying to push you out. I can't stand by and watch anymore. We're a team, you and me." Sophia's brown eyes streamed, her hands squeezing his, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Thank you, Marco," she said, her smile genuine but fleeting, her heart racing. "But you know she's not going to take this well. She'll fight back harder than ever. We need to be ready." Marco's green eyes shadowed, his hands tightening on hers, his voice low. "I know," he said, his words a warning, his heart heavy. She was furious last night. She said I was betraying the family, that I was letting you destroy everything. I don't know what she'll do next." Isabella Rossi was a tempest, her gray eyes cold with rage, her silver hair pinned tightly, her black dress a stark contrast to the warmth of the Trattoria as she stood in the dining room, her hands directing the staff with a renewed intensity. At 58, Isabella was a matriarch who would not be defied, her voice a low growl as she spoke to the head waiter, her words a poison. "Sophia is out," she said, her smile a mask for her venom, her hands folded. "I'm bringing in a new head chef, Giovanni, from Trattoria Bella. He understands our traditions, our family. Sophia will work the line, nothing more." The staff whispered, their loyalty torn, the New York morning a cold witness to Isabella's retaliation. Giovanni, a stout man in his 40s with a thick Italian accent and a penchant for tradition, arrived that afternoon, his brown eyes warm but obedient, his hands eager to take over the kitchen. Sophia's brown eyes blazed as she watched him take her place at the pass, her hands trembling, her heart heavy with betrayal. Sophia confronted Isabella in the office, her brown eyes blazing, her voice trembling as she stood her ground, the dining room buzzing beyond the door. "You can't do this, Isabella," she said, her hands shaking, her heart racing. "I'm the head chef. I've earned that role. The critics loved my food. The customers loved it. You're punishing me because Marco chose me, because I won't bow to you." Isabella's gray eyes were icy, her hands folded, her voice a hiss. "You've won nothing, Sophia," she said, her words a dagger, her smile a mask of disdain. "This is my restaurant, my family. You'll never be a Rossi, not while I'm here. Giovanni will bring us back to what we were before you tried to ruin us." Sophia's brown eyes streamed, her hands clenching, her voice breaking. "You're the one ruining this family, Isabella. she said, her words a declaration of war, her heart heavy. I'm not giving up. I'll find a way to fight back. You'll see. That afternoon, Sophia met with Vincent Moretti, the food investor who had offered her a partnership after her event. Her brown eyes bright with determination, her hands clutching her portfolio as she pitched a new vision, a restaurant of her own, a direct competitor to Rossi's Trattoria, built on her fusion of tradition and innovation. Vincent, his blue eyes impressed, his silver hair gleaming in the cafe light, nodded, his voice warm. I'm in, Sophia, he said, his words a lifeline, his smile genuine. Let's do this. Sophia's Kitchen. We'll start small, but with your talent, it'll grow. But when Sophia returned to the trattoria, her brown eyes glowing with hope, she found a new storm Isabella had spread, a vicious rumor to the staff and customers. Her voice sweet but venomous as she spoke to a regular. Sophia stole our family recipes, she said, her smile a mask for her venom, her hands smoothing her dress. She's planning to use them against us, against the Rossi legacy. The rumors spread like wildfire, the staff whispering, the customers murmuring. The New York evening, a cold witness to Isabella's retaliation. Sophia confronted her in the dining room, her brown eyes blazing, her voice trembling as she stood her ground. The trattoria quiet, but for their voices. You're lying. Isabella, she said, her hands shaking, her heart racing. I'd never steal from this family. I'm trying to build something new, something better. Or why can't you let me be a Rossi? Isabella's gray eyes were cold, her hands folded, her voice a hiss. Because you'll never be a Rossi. Sophia, she said, her words a final blow, her smile a mask of disdain. You're a thief, a traitor, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. Marco stepped forward, his green eyes streaming, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he looked between them. Stop, both of you, he said, his words a plea, his heart torn. This has to end. We're a family. But, Mom, Sophia's right. You're going too far. Sophia's brown eyes met Marco's, her heart heavy, the dining room, a battlefield. The New York evening, a cold witness to a family on the brink of collapse. Shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 6. The Taste of Betrayal. New York City. New York. My 2025. The New York City afternoon was a flurry of activity in Little Italy, its streets alive with the hum of tourists and locals, the scent of garlic and marinara sauce drifting through the air. Inside, Rossi's Trattoria. The atmosphere was a powder keg. The dining room bustling with the lunch rush, its red checkered tablecloths a stark contrast to the storm brewing within the Rossi family. Sophia Rossi stood in the kitchen, her brown eyes focused, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her hands plating a branzino with citrus glaze. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had chosen to fight, her partnership with investor Vincent Moretti giving her a new path. Sophia's Kitchen, a restaurant that would challenge Rossi's Trattoria. But her mother-in-law, Isabella Rossi, was a force determined to crush her. Isabella Rossi sat in her office, her gray eyes cold with rage, her silver hair pinned tightly, her hands flipping through a stack of documents as she spoke to a private investigator, a gruff man in his 50s named Tony Russo. At 58, Isabella was a matriarch who would not be defied. Her voice a low growl as she outlined her plan. "Find proof." "Tony," she said, her hands trembling, her tone venomous. "Sophia's stealing our family recipes, I know it. She's planning to use them at her new restaurant. To destroy us. I want evidence, something I can use to sue her. To ruin her." Tony nodded, his brown eyes sharp, his voice gruff. "I'll dig, Mrs. Rossi," he said, his hands pocketing a retainer check, his tone professional. "If there's proof, I'll find it. But lawsuits like this, they can get messy." "Are you sure?" Isabella's gray eyes blazed, her hands folding, her voice a hiss. "I'm sure," she said, her words a declaration of war, her smile a mask of disdain. "She's no Rossi. She never will be. I'll protect my family, my legacy, no matter what it takes." Meanwhile, Sophia met with Vincent Moretti at a construction site in Soho, the future home of Sophia's Kitchen, her brown eyes bright with hope, her hands gesturing to the space as she shared her vision. "We'll have an open kitchen here," she said, her voice steady, her heart racing. "The menu will be a mix of Rossi classics and my own creations, gnocchi with truffle cream, panna cotta with lavender. We'll draw in the critics, the influencers, even Rossi's regulars." Vincent, his blue eyes impressed, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight, nodded, his voice warm. "It's coming together, Sophia," he said, his words a balm, his smile genuine. "You're already pulling in Rossi's customers. I've heard they're talking about your event last week. You're a threat, and that's a good thing." But back at Rossi's Trattoria, the threat was a spark to Isabella's fury, her gray eyes cold as she watched the dining room, her hands smoothing her dress as she spoke to a regular, her voice sweet but venomous. "Sophia's betraying us," she said, her smile a mask for her venom, her hands gesturing to the Trattoria. "She's stealing our recipes, planning to use them against us. She's no Rossi, she's a traitor." The rumor spread, the regulars whispering, the staff murmuring. The New York afternoon, a cold witness to Isabella's campaign. Sophia returned to the Trattoria, her brown eyes glowing with hope, only to be met with cold stares. The staff avoiding her, the regulars turning away. Her heart sank, her hands trembling, the realization hitting her like a wave. Isabella was at it again, poisoning the well. Sophia confronted Marco, her brown eyes wet, her voice breaking as she stood in the kitchen, the Trattoria buzzing beyond the door. "She's spreading lies again." "Marco," she said, her hands shaking, her heart heavy. "She's telling everyone I stole the recipes, that I'm betraying the family. I can't keep fighting her like this." Marco's green eyes streamed, his hands reaching for hers, his voice breaking. "I'll handle it, Soph," he said, his words a promise, his heart torn. "I chose you, I meant it. I'll talk to her, make her stop. We'll get through this." But Isabella was relentless, her gray eyes cold as she met with Tony Russo later that day, her hands trembling as he handed her a notebook, Sophia's, taken from her station in the kitchen, its pages filled with recipes, including one for a marinara that bore a striking resemblance to the Rossi family recipe. "This is it," Isabella said, her voice a hiss, her hands clutching the notebook. "Proof she's stealing from us. I'll destroy her." Tony's brown eyes narrowed, his voice low. "Mrs. Rossi, it's similar, but it's not identical," he said, his tone cautious, his hands gesturing to the notebook. "She's made changes her own spin. It might not hold up in court." Isabella's gray eyes blazed, her hands slamming the notebook down, her voice a growl. "It's enough," she said, her words a declaration of war, her smile a mask of rage. "She's done." That night, Isabella confronted Sophia in the dining room, her gray eyes blazing, her hands holding the notebook. The Trattoria quiet, but for their voices, the staff watching. The New York evening, a cold witness. "You thief," Isabella said, her voice trembling with rage, her hands shaking as she threw the notebook at Sophia's feet. "You stole our family recipe, our marinara, our legacy. I'll sue you." "Sophia, I'll make sure you never cook again." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her hands trembling as she picked up the notebook, her voice breaking. "This is my recipe, Isabella," she said, her heart racing, her resolve unyielding. "I created it. I added my own touches. You have no proof, because I didn't steal anything. You're just trying to destroy me because you can't control me." Marco stepped forward, his green eyes blazing, his hands trembling as he stood beside Sophia, his voice a growl. "Enough." "Mom," he said, his words a defense, his heart torn. "Sophia's not a thief. You're the one tearing this family apart. I won't let you do this to her." Isabella's gray eyes streamed, her hands clenching, her voice a hiss as she turned away. The dining room, a battlefield. The New York evening, a cold witness to a family on the brink of collapse. Shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 7. The Taste of Division. New York City. New York. May 2025. The New York City morning was a haze of gray clouds and drizzle, its skyline muted through the windows of a downtown courthouse, a fitting backdrop for the storm tearing through the Rossi family. Sophia Rossi sat in the defendant's chair, her brown eyes shadowed with exhaustion, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had fought for her place. Her new venture. Sophia's kitchen, a beacon of hope. But the lawsuit from her mother-in-law, Isabella Rossi, accusing her of stealing family recipes, threatened to destroy everything she'd built. Marco Rossi sat beside her, his green eyes heavy with guilt, his dark hair neatly combed, his hands gripping hers under the table. At 31, Marco was a man who had chosen his wife over his mother, a decision that had fractured his family. His voice low as he whispered, "We'll get through this." "Soph," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone a mix of resolve and fear. "The lawyer, Rebecca, she's good. She'll prove you didn't steal anything." Sophia's brown eyes glistened, her hands squeezing his, her voice a whisper. "I hope so." "Marco," she said, her heart racing, her resolve unyielding. "But your mom, she's not going to stop. She's turned the whole community against us, against me. I don't know how much more I can take." Isabella Rossi sat across the courtroom, her gray eyes cold with rage, her silver hair pinned tightly, her black dress a stark contrast to the sterile room. At 58, Isabella was a matriarch who would not be defied. Her voice a low growl as she spoke to her lawyer, her hands clutching a stack of documents. "She stole our marinara recipe," she said. Her words a poison, her smile a mask of disdain. "It's in that notebook proof she's a thief. I want her ruined." The courtroom buzzed. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, her voice sharp as she called the session to order. The New York Morning a cold witness to the battle. Rebecca, Sophia's lawyer, a sharp woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor, presented their defense, her voice steady as she spoke. "The recipe in question is not identical to the Rossi family marinara," she said, her hands gesturing to the notebook, her tone confident. "Sophia Rossi has made significant alterations, her own creative additions. There's no theft here," but Isabella's lawyer countered, his voice smooth, his hands presenting a new piece of evidence, a signed statement from Giovanni, the new head chef at Rossi's Trattoria, claiming he'd seen Sophia copying the family recipe book. Sophia's brown eyes widened, her hands trembling, the realization hitting her like a wave. Isabella had orchestrated this, paying Giovanni to lie, to fabricate evidence against her, Sophia whispered to Rebecca, her brown eyes blazing, her voice trembling. "That's a lie," she said, her heart racing, her resolve unyielding. "Giovanni's lying. I never touched that book. Isabella's behind this. She paid him to frame me." Rebecca nodded, her brown eyes sharp, her voice low. "We'll cross-examine him," she said, her hands flipping through her notes, her tone confident. "We'll get to the truth." The cross-examination was brutal, Rebecca's questions cutting, her voice sharp as she pressed Giovanni, his brown eyes darting, his hands sweating as he stumbled over his answers. "Isn't it true that Mrs. Rossi offered you a bonus to make this statement?" she asked, her tone a blade, her hands gesturing to the jury. "Isn't it true that you never saw Sophia Rossi copy anything, that this is a fabrication?" Giovanni's face flushed, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he admitted the truth. "Yes," he said, his words a confession, his heart heavy. "Mrs. Rossi, she paid me. I didn't see anything. I lied." The courtroom buzzed, the jury murmuring, the judge's gavel a sharp crack as she called for order. The New York Morning a cold witness to Isabella's defeat. Isabella's gray eyes streamed, her hands clenching, her voice a hiss as she turned to Marco, her words a final blow. "You've betrayed me, Marco," she said, her tone venomous, her smile a mask of rage. "You're no son of mine." Marco's green eyes streamed, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he stood, his words a defense. "You betrayed us." "Mom," he said, his heart torn, his resolve unyielding. "Sophia's my wife. She's a Rossi. Whether you accept it or not, I won't let you destroy her." Sophia's brown eyes met Marco's, her heart heavy, the courtroom a battlefield. The New York Morning a cold witness to a family shattered by division. Shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 8. The Taste of Sacrifice. New York City. New York, June 2025. The New York City evening shimmered with the vibrant energy of Soho, its streets alive with the hum of hipsters and foodies, the scent of roasted garlic and fresh herbs drifting through the air. Inside, Sophia's kitchen. The atmosphere was electric. The dining room packed for its grand opening, its modern decor a stark contrast to the traditional warmth of Rossi's Trattoria. Its tables set with sleek white plates, its walls adorned with minimalist art. Sophia Rossi stood at the pass, her brown eyes glowing with pride, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her hands plating a risotto with lavender-infused peas. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had fought for her dream. Her victory in court against Isabella Rossi, a hard-won battle. But the cost had been high. A family fractured, a husband torn, a legacy on the brink. Marco Rossi stood at the front of the house, his green eyes heavy with exhaustion, his dark hair neatly styled, his smile forced as he greeted the guests. At 31, Marco was a man who had chosen his wife over his mother, a decision that had cost him dearly. His voice low as he approached Sophia, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "It's a hit." "Soph," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone a mix of pride and sorrow. "The critics are here. The influencers. They're all raving about the food. You did it." Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper as she wiped her hands on her apron. "Thanks, Marco," she said, her smile genuine but fleeting, her heart heavy. "But you don't look happy. I know this has been hard. Your mom, the Trattoria, everything. I feel like I've torn your family apart." Marco's green eyes streamed, his hands tightening on her shoulders, his voice breaking. "It's not your fault, Soph," he said, his words a plea, his heart torn. "Mom made her choices. She pushed you away. Pushed me away. I chose you because I love you, because I believe in you. But I miss her. I miss the family we used to be." The weight of his words hung heavy, the kitchen buzzing beyond them, the New York evening a warm backdrop through the windows. Sophia had seen the toll on Marco, the sleepless nights, the quiet moments of despair, the way he flinched when customers mentioned Rossi's Trattoria, now under new management after Isabella had stepped back. Unable to face the shame of her failed lawsuit, the community had turned on him, loyal regulars whispering that he'd betrayed his mother, that he'd let Sophia destroy their legacy. Marco was a shadow of himself, his green eyes dull, his smile a ghost of what it had been. Sophia's brown eyes glistened, her hands reaching for his, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Marco, I can't keep doing this to you," she said, her words a sacrifice, her heart breaking. "I love you, but I can't watch you suffer. Maybe you should go back to the Trattoria. Work with your mom. Try to fix things. I can manage Sophia's kitchen on my own." Marco's green eyes widened, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he shook his head. "No, Sophia," he said, his words a vow, his heart torn. "I'm not leaving you. I chose you, and I meant it. We'll build this together. I can't go back, not after what she did." The opening continued, the guests raving, the critics noting, Sophia's brown eyes bright as she served each dish, her hands steady, her resolve unyielding. But as the night reached its peak, a familiar figure stepped through the door, Isabella Rossi, her gray eyes cold with rage, her silver hair pinned tightly, her black dress a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere. her presence a storm that darkened the room. Isabella's voice cut through the hum of conversation, her hands gesturing to the guests, her tone sharp as she spoke. "This is a disgrace," she said, her words a public rebuke, her smile a mask of disdain. "Sophia Rossi thinks she can steal our legacy, our recipes, and call it her own. She's no chef, she's a thief, a traitor to the Rossi name." Sophia's brown eyes blazed, her hands trembling as she stepped forward, the dining room falling silent. The New York night a cold witness to her defiance. "I've stolen nothing, Isabella," she said, her voice steady, her heart racing. "I've built this with my own hands, my own recipes, my own vision. You've tried to destroy me at every turn, sabotage, lies, lawsuits, but I'm still here. I'm a Rossi, whether you accept it or not," the guests murmured, the critics watching, Marco's green eyes streaming as he stepped beside Sophia, his voice a growl. "Mom, stop," he said, his hands trembling, his heart torn. "This is Sophia's night, her dream. You've done enough damage. Leave." Isabella's gray eyes streamed, her hands clenching, her voice breaking as she looked at her son, her words a plea. "Marco, you're my son," she said, her tone a mix of rage and sorrow, her smile a mask of pain. "I did this for you, for our family. But I see now I've been wrong." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her heart heavy, the dining room a battlefield, the New York night a cold witness to a fragile truce, a family on the brink of healing or collapse, shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 9. The Taste of Reconciliation. New York City, New York, June 2025. The New York City evening was a tapestry of twinkling lights and distant sirens, its streets quiet in the late hours, the scent of rain and marinara sauce lingering in the air. Inside Rossi's Trattoria, the atmosphere was a delicate truce, the dining room closed to the public, its red checkered tablecloths set for a private family dinner, its pendant lights casting a soft glow over the scene. Sophia Rossi stood in the kitchen, her brown eyes cautious, her dark hair loose over her shoulders, her hands plating a tiramisu, a traditional recipe with a hint of her own creativity. A touch of espresso gel she'd added to honor her own journey. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had fought for her place. Her new restaurant, Sophia's Kitchen, a success. But the rift with her mother-in-law, Isabella Rossi, still lingered, a wound that needed healing. Marco Rossi stood at the dining room entrance, his green eyes hopeful, his dark hair neatly combed, his hands adjusting the table settings as he prepared for the dinner he'd organized. At 31, Marco was a man who had chosen his wife over his mother, a decision that had cost him dearly. But tonight, he hoped to mend the fracture, his voice low as he approached Sophia, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Thank you for doing this, Soph," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone a mix of hope and fear. "I know it's hard after everything, but I think Mom's ready to talk, to listen. I want us to be a family again." Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper, as she wiped her hands on her apron. "I want that too." "Marco," she said, her smile cautious, her heart heavy. "But your mom, she's hurt me so much, sabotage, lies, lawsuits. I'll try for you, but I don't know if I can trust her. Isabella Rossi entered the dining room, her gray eyes guarded, her silver hair pinned elegantly, her black dress a stark contrast to the warmth of the space. At 58, Isabella was a matriarch who had been humbled. Her failed lawsuit and public confrontation at Sophia's kitchen, forcing her to confront her own actions. But her pride still lingered, her voice low as she spoke. Marco! Sophia, she said, her hands folded, her tone cautious. Thank you for inviting me. The dinner began, the air thick with tension, the table set with Sophia's dishes, a gnocchi with truffle cream, a branzino with citrus glaze, and the tiramisu she'd prepared as a peace offering. Sophia's brown eyes watched Isabella, her hands steady as she served each dish, her heart pounding with anticipation. Isabella's gray eyes softened as she tasted the gnocchi, her hands pausing, her voice a whisper. This is good. Sophia, she said, her words a surprise, her smile hesitant. It's different, but it works. Sophia's brown eyes widened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper. Thank you, Isabella, she said, her smile genuine, her resolve cautious. I've always wanted to honor your traditions. I wanted to add my own touch, to make them ours. The tiramisu was the turning point. Isabella's gray eyes glistening as she tasted the espresso gel, her hands trembling, her voice breaking. This reminds me of my mother's recipe, she said, her words a bridge, her smile genuine. But the gel, it's new. It's beautiful. Sophia, the tension eased. The New York night a warm witness as Sophia and Isabella began to talk, their voices soft, their hands gesturing as they shared stories of their love for food, for family. Isabella's gray eyes softened, her hands reaching for Sophia's, her voice a whisper. I've been wrong. Sophia, she said, her words a confession, her heart open. I was so afraid of losing our legacy. I didn't see what you were trying to build. I'm sorry. Sophia's brown eyes streamed, her hands squeezing Isabella's, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Thank you, Isabella, she said, her smile genuine, her heart healing. I want to be part of this family I always have. Let's do this together! Marco's green eyes glowed, his hands reaching for theirs, his voice breaking. We're a family again, he said, his words a vow, his heart whole. Let's make it work. But Sophia's brown eyes held a flicker of doubt, her heart cautious, the dining room a fragile truce. The New York night, a warm witness to a reconciliation that felt too good to be true. Shadows in the restaurant. Chapter 10. The Taste of Renewal. New York City, New York, June 2025. The New York City evening glowed with the vibrant energy of Little Italy, its streets alive with the hum of laughter, the clink of glasses, and the scent of garlic and basil wafting through the air. Inside, Rossi's Trattoria. The atmosphere was a celebration. The dining room packed for a special event, a unveiling of a new menu, a collaboration between Sophia Rossi and Isabella Rossi. Its tables set with red checkered tablecloths, its pendant lights casting a warm glow over the scene. Sophia stood at the pass, her brown eyes bright with pride. her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her hands plating a risotto with lavender-infused peas alongside Isabella's traditional marinara. At 29, Sophia was a chef who had fought for her place. Her reconciliation with Isabella, a fragile victory. Her new restaurant, Sophia's Kitchen, a success. But the future of the Rossi family still uncertain. Isabella Rossi stood beside her, her gray eyes warm with a newfound respect, her silver hair pinned elegantly, her black dress a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere. At 58, Isabella was a matriarch who had been humbled, her apology to Sophia a step toward healing. Her voice soft as she spoke to the guests, her hands gesturing to the dishes. Tonight, we celebrate a new chapter for Rossi's Trattoria, she said, her smile genuine, her tone proud. A collaboration between tradition and innovation, my recipes and Sophia's vision. Together, we're stronger. Marco Rossi stood at the front of the house, his green eyes glowing with happiness, his dark hair neatly styled, his smile warm as he watched his mother and wife work together. At 31, Marco was a man who had seen his family fracture and heal, his voice low as he approached Sophia, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You did it, Sophie," he said, his green eyes meeting hers, his tone a mix of pride and relief. "You and Mom, you're a team now. I've never been prouder." Sophia's brown eyes softened, her heart racing, her voice a whisper as she wiped her hands on her apron. "Thanks, Marco," she said, her smile genuine but cautious, her heart heavy. It means everything to hear that. But I can't shake this feeling. Things with your mom, they're better. But I don't know if I can fully trust her. The event was a triumph. The guests raving, the critics noting Sophia and Isabella moving through the dining room, their voices a harmony as they explained each dish. The New York night a warm witness to their collaboration. The risotto was a hit, its lavender notes a perfect complement to the rich marinara. The tiramisu, a blend of Isabella's recipe and Sophia's espresso gel drawing. Gasps of delight. The trattoria buzzed, the customers cheering, the critics snapping photos. The New York night a warm backdrop through the windows. But as the night progressed, a whisper reached Sophia, a rumor spread by a regular, her voice low but venomous. "I heard Isabella's planning a new restaurant, something to compete with." Sophia's Kitchen. "She's not done fighting." Sophia's brown eyes widened, her hands trembling, the realization hitting her like a wave. Isabella might not be as reconciled as she seemed. Sophia confronted Isabella in the kitchen, her brown eyes blazing, her voice trembling as she stood her ground. The trattoria buzzing beyond the door. "Is it true, Isabella?" she said, her hands shaking, her heart racing. "Are you planning a new restaurant to compete with me? After everything we've been through, after tonight?" Isabella's gray eyes widened, her hands trembling, her voice breaking as she shook her head. "No, Sophia," she said, her words a defense, her heart open. "That's a lie. I'd never do that. But I'll be honest, I thought about it months ago. When I was still angry, still afraid, I was wrong to even consider it. I'm sorry." Sophia's brown eyes streamed, her hands clenching. her voice steady despite the storm inside. "I want to believe you, Isabella," she said, her smile cautious, her heart heavy. "I want us to be a family to work together, but I need to protect myself, too. I'm keeping Sophia's kitchen. It's my space, my dream. We can collaborate here, but I need something that's mine." Isabella's gray eyes softened, her hands reaching for Sophia's, her voice a whisper. "I understand. Sophia," she said, her smile genuine, her heart healing. "Let's build this together, but keep your space. You've earned it." Marco's green eyes glowed, his hands reaching for theirs, his voice breaking. "We're a family," he said, his words a vow, his heart whole. "We'll make it work." The New York night was a warm witness, the Trattoria, a beacon of renewal. But Sophia's brown eyes held a flicker of doubt. The future of the Rossi family, a fragile promise, a story still unfolding.